A violent storm swept through Rome, Italy, unleashed torrential rain, thunder and gale-force winds and left parts of the capital flooded and paralyzed. Within a minute, narrow cobblestone streets turned into raging rivers, cars were submerged and public transport ground to the hail. It was terrified. The sky turned completely black, said Francesca Bianchi, a resident near the Vatican. The wind howled like a jet engine, and lightning struck so close it shook the windows. The storm struck during the rush hour, catching thousands of commuters of guard. Firefighters received over 400 emergency calls for flooded homes. Down at trees and stranded motorists. It is a Trastevere and Ostia district. Strong winds tore off roof, titles and trooped scooters, while several metro stations were forced to close due to the rising water levels. Meteorologists described the storm as one of the most intense in recent years. Flooded a sharp crash between the humid African air and the cold Atlantic currents of the central Italy. The Mediterranean has become a beginning ground the super-changing storm, said Dr. Elisa Conte, a climate researcher at La Sapienza University. Social media filmed the dramatic video showing lightning illumination the Coliseum, have covered the Spanish Steps, and a water cascading down ancient star rays. In some neighborhoods, power outage left hundreds of homes in the darkness for hours. Authorities have urged caution a cleanup continue. Rome major paralyzed emergency crew for the rapid response plan optimised the city again drainage system remained the major vulnerability. We must adapt. This is a new climate reality, she said. For many Romans, the storm severe as a powerful reminder for even the eternal city is not immune the growing fear the extreme weather. As Dame broke sunlight related the city's story scarred the still standard resilience as ever. A sudden and violent storm hit Sicily, leaving flooded streets and damaged houses, and residents trying to save themselves. Torrential rain, strong winds, and large hailstorms swept across the island, hitting Palermo, Catania, and Messina particularly hard. It was terrible, said Gianni Canti, and residents of Palermo. The hail broke out windows, and the water poured into the streets like a river. I have never seen anything like it. Emergency service worked for the full capacity, responded to fallen trees, blocked roads, and stranded cars. Several rivers, including smaller turbulence in Catania, they burst their banks, forced dozens of families to evacuate. The streets to coastal towns were impossible, and local airports responded to numerous delays and cancellation. Historical cities were also affected. In Palermo, flooded inundated part of the cathedral and Quattro Canti Securia, while tourist centers such as Turmania had to carry out emergency evacuation. Boats were washed away from the Mourning, and the local market were forced to close. Meteorologists explained the storm as a collision between the Mediterranean low-pressure system and warm humid air from the Africa. This great short but extremely intense storm. Agriculture area suffered significant damage. Olive groves, vineyard, and citrus orange were damaged by the hail, threatening both local economy and exports. Authority called for emergency aid to affected farmers and businesses. On Tuesday afternoon, Rome experienced a shocking weather change. Heavy hail fell on the city, leaving an instant cover in ice and chaos. The warm and humid day quickly turned into sin and destruction as dark cloud gathered over the capital. Without warning, released hailstones the size of walnuts with pelted cars, roofs, and pristines. Within the minutes, the city's cobbled streets turned into ice rivers, and ambulances series broke through the narrow valley and Trastevere and Tuscany. Locals took refuge in cafes, shops, and metro station while the storm raged for nearly an hour. "It was terrible," said Gianni Moretti, a taxi driver who was cut off in the storm. "The hail was so heavy and I could see route. I thought the white ship would break." The hail caused significant damage to white ship, damaged cars, and flooding low-lying area. In some parts of Villa Appia Nuova, parked cars were flooded up to their doors, and a section of Rome metro lines A and B were temporarily closed due to water ingress. Firefighters received more than 500 emergency calls, including the rescue of people from the stuck cars and flooded basements.
Mai visto una roba del genere, guarda!
"We lost almost everything again," said restaurant Elena Rossi, her voice breaking to the surrey of the match. Elsewhere, boats were tested again this storm among vents, water taxis capacity, and debris fields and channels. Emergency crew working throughout the night and evacuate elderly residents to reinforce power lines damaged by the fallen trees. Schools and museums remain closed and cleanup operation continue. Meteorologists attributed the storm to collisions between warm Mediterranean air and cold front descending from the northern Europe, and combination that triggering extreme conditions and intense rainfall. Italy's Civil Protection Agency has issued a red alert for the much of Veneto region, warning that more storms could follow. Citrus, grove, vineyards, and olive orange in the eastern Sicily were heavily damaged. Farmer Maria Russo near Catania said, "The hail destroyed weeks in the work in minutes. Our harvest is gone." Local authority estimated preliminary damage in the million of euros. Social media was flooded with the dramatic videos and the hail bouncing off historic buildings. Streets transformed into the city rivers, and the residents helped each other to navigate the flooded areas. Lightning and the thunder added to the chaotic scene, where the palm trees and old city was buried the both of strong wind. Meteorologists warn that the storm like are becoming more frequent due to climate change. With the increased atmospheric instability across the Mediterranean, Dr. Alessandro Conti, a climate expert, noted, "Warners see a more humid air, the falling storm of unpredictable intensity in the Sicily and across southern Europe. By nightfall, cleanup crews work to clear debris, restore traffic, and AC structure damage. Residents emergency casually to inspect their constant streets, capturing strikers, image an ancient Sicily town under the blanket of hail." Meteorologists attribute the storm to a collision between most Mediterranean air and cold floor northern currents, which create conditions to supercell over central Italy. These sudden connective storms can release enormous energy in a very short time, explained Dr. Paolo Rinaldi, meteorologist with the Italian Meteorological Service. The storm also caused significant damage to agriculture in the Lazio region, where vineyards and olive groves were hardest hit heavy hail, causing millions of dollars in damage. According to preliminary estimates, farmers such as Francesca Bianchi near Frascati described the event devastation as it destroyed two entire crews in a matter of minutes. Social media was flooded with a video showing hailstones bounce on the historic moments, water pounding down the Spanish steps, and the residents wandering their frozen streets. Authority urged people to stay indoors, and emergency service working through the night to clear debris and restore transport. Experts warned that the storm this intensity may become more frequent due to climate change, with the increase in atmospheric instability and contributed to extreme weather events throughout the Mediterranean region. As night fell, Rome was transformed into a surreal scene, and its monuments glistered under the layer of ice. Streets were littered with the fallen branches and damaged cars, a stark reminder and unpredictable power of nature in the heart of the eternal city. Said senior metallurgist Dr. Alexandra Ferry. The impact on agriculture was severe. Vineyards and olive groves in Frascati and surrounding areas were damaged, where preliminary estimated putting crop losers into millions of euros. Local farmer Marco Berlandi said they have failed in a matter of minutes and destroyed weeks to halt. Social media was flooded with the dramatic images, hail bouncing off historic statues, water flooding in the Spanish steps, and the residents helping each other to navigate the street. Many compared this scene of winter storm described the summer temperatures. Experts warn that climate change is intensifying such storms throughout the Mediterranean. Climatologist Dr. Gianni Rosso noted, warmer sea and increasing atmospheric humidity increased likelihood in a sudden severe storm. By nightfall, the streets of Rome were glistered with ice and debris and remind of the powerful of nature. Residents ventured occasionally outside to assess the damage, capturing surreal images and instant landmarks under the glittering blanket of hail. Violent storm struck Rome late Monday, transforming the Italy capital into a scene of chaos rarely widespread in the recent years. Within the minute, sky turned pitch black and the torrential rain, the gale-force wind, swept across the city, uprooted trees, flooded major roads, and caused widespread blackout. According to the Italian Civil Protection Department, the storm formed over the Tyrrhenian Sea before slamming into the Lazio with unprecedented intensity. It was like a midday, said local resident Francesca Bianchi, described how lightning illuminated the street's landmark from the Coliseum to St. Paletta Bellizia, and thunder echoed across the hills. Public transport was heavily disrupted. Metro Lane A was partially closed due to flooded tunnels, while firefighters responded to more than 300 emergency calls for trapped motorists and fallen debris. Rome history, where the also turned into Russian river submerged cars on their window.
Mai visto una roba del genere, guarda.
Authority urged residents to avoid unnecessary travel. This was one of the strongest storms in Rome has experienced in recent years, said Maria Roberta Giglierti, who covered in the emergency task force overnight, where coordinated cleanup operation and assessment structure damage throughout the city. Meteorologists at the Italian Air Force Meteorological Center attributed the storm to a sudden collision of the most Mediterranean air and the cold front from the northern Europe, which formed powerful thundercloud over central Italy. The conditions were ideal for the formation of supercell, explained senior meteorologist Dr. Elisa Monti. Such storm can develop within a few hours and cause heavy rain in a very short period of time. Several days, including Ostia and EU, received more than 18 millimeters of rain in an hour, a much worse than a rainfall in the Sydney evening. The deluge caused a temporary power outage in some parts of the city and disrupted train service to the leisure region. A dramatic video appeared on the social media showed lightning strikes at the Coliseum, water following down the French steps in the residence, forming a human chain to help each other across the flooding.
يا رب يا رب لطفك يا ارحم الراحمين يا رب يا الله لطفك يا رب يا الله لطفك يا رب.
A sudden violent hailstorm struck Rome, Italy, covering part of the capital in ice and causing severe disruption to daily life. The storm, which erupted late in the afternoon, estimated both residents and tourists with the intensity transformed the eternal city into the unreal winter scene in the middle of autumn. According to Italy's Severe Protection Agency, hailstones the size of walnuts fell continuously for about 20 minutes, damaged vehicles, destroyed with windows and returned through outdoor restoring avoid. Emergency service prevented hundreds of rescue requests, particularly in central and northern districts like Perilli, Prati and Flaminio, where roads flooded instantly. The traffic came to complete standstill. Video posted online showed vehicles plummeting through the thick layer of hail and pedestrians seek shelters on the sidewalks and subway station away. Local residents Gialiganti, caught in the storm on her way home, said it was like a blizzard. I could believe this was Rome. A violent hailstorm has battered parts of Sicily, transformed sun-shocked towns into city landscape, and caused widespread disruption across the island. The powerful storm struck suddenly on a Tuesday afternoon, hitting Palermo, Catania, and several inland communities with the torrents of rain and a hailstorm as large as a walnut. Within a minute, roads turned white, cars were dented with the flash floods swept through the narrow streets. It looked like a storm in August, said Maria Russa, a shop owner in Catalnesia. The hail came down so fast and hard it broke out window and filtered the shop floor with water. Emergency crews were distributed across Sicily as a local authority received hundreds of distress calls. Firefighters worked late into the night to rescue drivers trapped in the submerged vehicles and clearing hail pocket roads. In Palermo, parts of the Sicily Historic Center were blanketed in ice to 15 centimeters deep, forcing police to close several main roads and tunnels. Meteorologists say the storm was triggered by intense grayish air masses, warm, humid rise from the Mediterranean, colding with a cold front descended from the northern Europe. This is a classic Mediterranean instability event, explained Dr. Elisa Conte from Italy's National Weather Service. Heat atmosphere were loaded in energy, and when it broke, the rainfall was explosive. A severe hailstorm swept across the northern Italy, battered cities from Milan to Bologna, with ice stones the size of a tennis ball and leaving a trail of destruction across the region. The storm, which broke out late on Wednesday evening, turned streets into rivers and the ice and causing chaos in that meteorologists describe it as one of the most severe hailstorms hailstone in the Italy recent history. Residents of Lombardy and Emilia-Romagna described scenes of panic and thunder rumble overhead and a huge hailstone flooded through cars and groups. It felt like the sky was falling, said Francesca Bianchi, a resident of Parma. The noise was different. We thought the window would explode. Local authority reported hundreds of emergency calls. Firefighters worked through the night and rescued stranded motorists to clear fallen trees. In Bergamo, entire neighborhoods were left without power, and strong winds and ice built up damaged power lines.
Non ci credo. Oddio. Qua. La moto. La macchina.
The land were deepened on the cast field destroyed it. Power outage left more than 400,000 homes in the dark. A rail service were suspended and Palermo airport was severely disrupted. Businesses and county millets as losers, with tourism, agriculture and fishing particularly hard hit. Sicily famous citrus groves, olive trees and vineyards were flooded, raising fears to flood and shortage. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni declared the flooding a national emergency, promising immediate funding to military support. We stand with the Sicily, she said. European Union official also pledged to assist with the barriers linking to the disaster and urgent need to action on climate change. Experts warn that climate change is intensifying on severe Mediterranean storms, and warning seas are contributing to more intense rainfall. Dr. Rilene Rossi, a climatologist, said. What we are seeing in Sicily, a venial future is urgent action to take no taking. As the water begins to rescind, thousands of people forced to painful task to rebuilding. Standing outside her destroyed homes in Palermo, Servia Rosa Ferraro said with tears in her eyes, "The Sicilians are strong, but the storm was broken our heart." Parts of the southern Italy are trying to recover from the torrential rain that caused a devastating flood in Sicily. Flooding cities, blocked roads and leaving thousands of people without electricity. Officials have called the disaster a national emergency. Within hours, the streets of Palermo, Catania and Messina turned into raging rivers that swept away cars and flooded the first floor to homes and businesses. The Italian Civil Protection Agency reported that more than 115 millimeters of rain fell in less than 20 hours, an amount that usually falls over several months. Local resident Maria Russo told reporters, "The water came so fast that in a matter of minutes my streets turned into river. We didn't have time to have anything." Emergency service rescue families standing on rooftops and firefighters worked throughout the night clearing debris and pumping water out of hospitals and schools. At least 20,000 households were left without power and many villages remain isolated after landslides blocked acid roads. Authority confirmed several injuries, at least 3 deaths, although that toll could rise in such countries. The Sicilian city of Palermo is trying to recover after the violent storm that caused chaos throughout the region, bringing record rainfall, destructive winds and widespread flooding. In a matter of hours, almost a month of worst of rainfall caused sweat to the overflow and the streets flood. Footage from the city shows cars floating like toys, buses stuck in the middle on the roads and firing residents seek refuge in the rooftop. The water rose so quickly that we barely had time to escape, said Giovanni Russo, whose family was rescued to firefighters from from their flooded apartment. At least 5 people were killed and dozens were injured. More than 200 residents were evacuated from their homes, and thousands were left without power due to damage in power lines caused by violent recent lightning strikes. The historic center of Palermo, known for their architecture and the light market, was ill emptied. Businesses closed to tourists at the day hotels. Hospitals are overwhelmed, treating cases to hypothermia, injuries and shock. Emergency shelters have been set up in school and community halls to accommodate families who have lost their homes. The major called in a war storm in history, and their request urged assistance to the native level. In addition to Palermo rural area, the Sicily were also affected. Vineyard, olive farms and a citrus orange which are vital to the island economy were destroyed, rising concerns about the significant losses and agriculture. Transport link was paralyzed. Palermo airport suspended flights to several hours, and a ferry rail service was suspended due to flooding and landslides. Meteorologists said the storm was intensified by the collisions of warm Mediterranean waters with a cold front, increasingly common phenomenon linking to climate change. Italian Civil Protection Agency warning that Sicily is now one of the regions in Europe most vulnerable to extreme weather conditions. The human toll of storm is still being assessed. At least 3 days have been confirmed so far, including the elder man who drowned in flooding basement in Messina and young delivery driver who was swept away by flood waters in Catania. Dozens of people have been injured, many of them due to fallen debris and traffic incidents on the road, Middleside, Pullery or rain. Sicilian Governor Renata Citrelli visited the flooded areas on Tuesday, calling the damaged helicopters and promised long-term support. "We will not abandon our people. The recovery will be swift and complete," we promised during the press conference. Local volunteers are in the affected areas, diverted flood and helping to clear debris. Social media is now filled not only image and destructive but also of solidarity. Neighbors stretch offering shelters and young groups organized donated drivers. Schools in several provinces remain closed to damage assessment continue. Psychologists have been sent to provide assistance to children and families affected by trauma, especially in the hardest hit community of Gela and Lixita. A powerful storm hit Sicily, plunging part of the Italian island into chaos as torrential rain, strong winds and flash floods swept through the gray skies, including Palermo, Catania and Messina. According to Italy's Civil Protection Department, the storm dumped more than 120 mm of rain in just a few hours, nearly a month's worth, flooding streets, collapsing roads and prompted dozens of evacuations. Emergency service responded more than 300 calls using helicopters to boat the rescue trapped residents. In Palermo, dramatic footage showed cars flooding like toys, and shops in the historic center of flooding. Giulia Romana, a 42-year-old local resident, said, "It was terrible. The water rushed into our house in a matter of minutes. The barrier had time to move the upper floor. Schools were closing in affected regions, and hundreds of people were left without power due to power outage." Authority also reported temporarily closed to Catania airport. The rail runway were flooded, caused delays and cancellations. Meteorologists explained the extreme weather conditions as a mitigant to rare Mediterranean hurricane formed by high sea temperature and unstable air masses. coastal town and rural village in Sicily have experienced some of the worst damage. The agriculture sector, which is crucial in the island economy, have been hit hard, with the fields and cars destroyed in the rising waters. Landslides have cut off aces of several mountains region, complicating rescue efforts. The situation remains real, with the emergency crew working around the clock to respond to new incidents and then arise. Italy is grappling with a severe flooding after days of relentless rain, particularly affected with the northern region of the country. Torrential downpour have caused rivers to swell, burst their banks and inundate towns and villages. The latest episode of flooding have left authorities struggling to cope with the growing crisis, with the thousands of people evacuated from their homes. The region of Emilia-Romagna, Lombardy and Veneto have been among the hardest hit. In Emilia-Romagna, widespread damage to infrastructure have been reported, with the roads submerged, bridges washed away and homes flooded. Several rivers, including the Po and the Agrio, have reached critical levels, forcing emergency service to respond rapidly to prevent further damage. The situation has been compounded by landslides in hilly areas, blocked roads and insulated communities. Its depths disappeared under murky water. Rural Sicily was not spared entire. The contrast of the tempest of olive groves and vineyards were ravaged. The customers of Sicily, rich agriculture heritage, which helpfully to their fields were submerged, their livelihoods momentarily wiped out the storm war. The damage of the agriculture sector is cornerstone of the Sicily economy is yet to be fully equipped, but early estimates suggest a significant impact. The storm has also rekindled discussions about the climate change and the increasingly visible impact. Scientists point to rising temperature in the Mediterranean in contrast of more frequent and intense weather patterns. This storm in Sicily is not an isolated incident, but horrible to changing climate in respect not geographical barriers. Amidst the chaos have been hearing displays of resilience and solidarity. Communities have together to support provided evacuation support to provide shelters to those displaced.
Santa Sofia, 3 ottobre 2024, aggiornamento ore 18. Questo è un grosso problema, molto grosso. Porta via il negozio qua.
A powerful storm hit Sicily. Italy caused severe weather conditions that resulted in widespread destruction across the island. The storm, characterized by heavy rain, gale-force winds, led to widespread flooding, power outage and extensive damage to infrastructure. Local authorities report that the crises of Catania and Palermo have been hit by hardest hit. In Catania, streets turned into rivers, and water level rose in 3 during herds. The historic city center, which usually turned to tourists, is now eerily quiet. Emergency service tried to cope with the field. Video shared on social media showed cars submerged and residents walking throughout the waist-deep water. The meteorological service has recorded widespread up to 100 km/h, which for the agriculture to situation. Trees have been uprooted, roofs have been ripped off buildings and debris is scattered to roadway, making the travel dangerous. The regional government has issued a red alert, urged residents to stay at home and avoid unnecessary travel. In Palermo, the storm led to similar extent to chaos. In local airport was temporarily closed due to flooding of runway, leading to flight cancellation and delays. Sicily has always faced extreme weather conditions, say climatologist Lucia De Santis, but the scale of intensity of this phenomenon is unprecedented. The sea surface temperature is at 3 Celsius above average and they contributed to strongest storm. The Italian Red Cross has launched into campaign to collect food, clothing and foods. Donations are accepted online in location collection center. Despite the destruction have also been stories by heroism. In Palermo, a police officer warning through the flood waters and rescue an elderly couple trapped in the flooded car. We couldn't leave them there. The water was rising fast, he said. As cleanup beginning to Sicily starts to recover, officials warn the crisis far from over. Weather warning reminding the police and another storm front cooled in southern Italy by the weekend. As Sicily slowly begins to dry up, the real lesson of the storm is being recovered not only in losers but also in dialogue and the growing average in the Mediterranean Sea. One of the candle ice calm sea is sunny skies is becoming of the epicenter of the climate disaster. Experts call this a turning point to the urge Southern European government is invest in the climate resilience. Coastal cities such as Palermo and Catania, densely populated, are reaching a culture heritage, particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels, increasing rainfall to heat waves. The Mediterranean Sea is warming 20% faster than the global average, said Dr. Elena Morandi, the climate researcher of University of Rome. This storm was not a fluke. This is part of the trend we are seeing more intense, more frequent, more destructive. International observers from UNESCO have experienced concerns about Sicily's historical monuments, many of which were flooded or damaged during this storm. The Brockway tributaries of Noto and ancient Greek ruins are still nude, and new parts of the parts surrounding Mount Etna were affected. Local authority urged residents to stay at home and avoid travel to roads and rail, more driving conditions dangerous. Emergency services were also called to help with the deal in the aftermath of the storm, including clearing roads and ASFDs affected. The hail comes as Italy, like much of Europe, experienced unseasonably cold weather. Forecasts predict that the extreme weather could continue for several days with some storms of heavy rain expected across the country. Although Rome is no stranger to extreme weather events, the sudden intensity and hailstorm cut off guard, as residents begin the process to cleaning up and repairing the damage caused by the storm. They will adapt it by keeping their close eye on weather forecast in the coming days. The storm, which has intensified in Mediterranean Sea over the past few hours, has taken a character as a full-fledged cyclone. Winds around the ridge and sometimes exceeded gusts of 100 km/h as the sea was through. In the coming days, severe storm will wake up to 5 to 6 meters high and peaks up to 8 meters are expected in the Mediterranean Sea between the southwestern provinces of Campania, especially Cilento and Calabria, as well as over most of Sicily and the Ionian Sea and the entire Adriatic. Tomorrow they shift the low-pressure system towards the Adriatic with a mainly effect to eastern basins. So let's take a look at the details. The Italian capital was through the internal turmoil after sudden and violent hailstorm hit the Rome, covering the streets with the ice, damaged vehicles and living residents stranded. The storm, which arrived without warning, was declared a meteorologist is one of the most intense hail the city has in the decades. Within minutes, the sky darkened over the central Rome before unleashing the barrage of hailstorms, some the size of Gold's Ball. The streets around the Colosseum, Pisa, Venezia and Trastevere was transformed into rivers of ice. Video shared on social media showed scooters and cars are skidding out of control while passengers rolled their shelters in subway station. It sounded like the gunshot of roofs, said residents. Chiara Lombardi was a car white plate was shattered. In 15 minutes everything was destroyed. Emergency service responded to hundreds of calls or rescue drivers trapped in the flooded overpasses and removing fallen branches. At least 25 people were injured, mainly is broken glass and debris. Rome came to a sudden halt after a severe hailstorm swept through the city, flooding the streets, paralyzing traffic, and shocking residents with the scale of the event. In the matter of minutes, large hailstones covered squares and boulevards, transformed parts of the Italian capital into winter scenes in the middle of autumn. Meteorologists explained that the storm was caused by the collisions of the most Mediterranean air with the approaching cold front, which caused severe thunderstorms capable of producing hailstones up to 4 centimeters in diameter. The storm in both the city center of the surrounding suburbs damaged cars, broke windows and blocked drainage systems. Public transport was severely disrupted. Buses were stuck in flooding underpasses and trams stopped because the tracks were covered in ice. Passengers described it chaotic scenes. It was like driving balls. To had to stop and wait because it was impossible to see the road, said Marco, local taxi driver. Emergency service responded to hundreds of calls. A rescue driver stuck in rising waters to help in precedent to the injured after slipping in the sidewalks, made slippery by hail.